Welcome everybody, this is Travis back to you with another training vlog. It's been a while, still dealing with computer issues, it's still not back and operating at full capacity, so I haven't been able to edit, but I did really want to chat with you guys because I miss kind of going over training stuff with you, so I'm going to try to make this one time through uncut video to kind of share a little bit of thoughts that I had from my training session yesterday and thought you guys can benefit from. And so there were two things that kind of came to mind that I thought would be great for a video from yesterday. And that was, the one was focused on how I was using damper setting. And I kind of made some adjustments to my damper setting and they had a really good effect. And so a little bit of background on me is that for me, my back has always been a weak point in my training. It's never gotten to the point where my rowing has injured my back, but it's certainly been a point where my back will get very sore, very stiff when I'm putting in a lot of volume. Or even in this case, a moderate amount of volume as I'm getting back into it. And so I think that that plays into a couple different reasons. One, if I'm neglecting my core work, then I'm not getting a good balance between my core muscles and my back muscles. And so my back muscles are gonna start to get compromised as a result of that. I think if I'm neglecting my kind of mobility and flexibility, then that's gonna also put my back in a compromised position. And if I'm sitting a lot, or if I'm laying down in bed or working on my laptop in bed or on the couch, then I tend to have that kind of curved back, and that's not a great position for the back. And so I just tend to have all these bad life habits that will get into the way of, ensuring that I have a good, strong support system for my rowing stroke when I'm starting to put in a lot of training. And I've been noticing that the effect of those other factors in my training a lot lately. And so really stiff with my back. It was starting to get to a point where it was really strenuous, to get into a workout and get settled to a good rhythm, especially since I've been spending a lot of time sitting in front of the computer in the last month, trying to do some work there. And it's just, sitting there hunched over and on a keyboard, just really not putting my back in a good position. I was really feeling that on my training. So I was struggling to put in volume. I was definitely struggling to put in any more than 30 minutes at a time without really kind of just, putting too much strain on the back. And so I was rowing, and I was also using a couple days ago, I was using the Erg Data app by Concept 2. And one of the great features of that is it has a drive time feature of it. And I have a pretty quick drive, and so I'm used to kind of seeing a kind of lower than normal number there, and I was hitting about 0.62, which I knew was probably a little quicker than it needed to be, but that was what I was seeing, and I was getting decent power application. But I had this kind of epiphany that maybe if I kind of adjusted that damper setting, that drag factor up, and I was able to kind of bring that drive time a little bit more into that 0.7 second range, which is a good range to be at to kind of support the idea of having a good gearing and a good drive time, that maybe that would take a little bit of pressure off the back. Because with that drag factor, if you are training with a load that is too high, you're putting a lot of pressure on your back and you could cause injury. And I think that's kind of an intuitive idea, is that, people know if you try to pick up something that's too heavy, you can hurt your back. But on the other side, if you're using a drag factor that is too low, that can also put some pressure on your back, because you're essentially having to move very quickly to get connected and accelerated in order to get the power output that's appropriate for whatever energy system you're training on that given day. And it kind of gets from being too heavy and too much load to almost being kind of too jerky. And so there's a risk for a lot of slippage in that kind of transfer, that system of power transfer through your body from your handle to your feet. And so these things started to come together to me, and I was like, okay, well, I'll try to increase my damper setting in an attempt to kind of bring that drive time up a little bit closer to 0.7 and also see how that feels on my back. And it was a big difference right away. And so immediately I felt a lot more comfort in connecting, and with the acceleration, I was still able to really kind of, move that handle, accelerate the handle well into the release, which is critical for successful rowing on the water. And that drive time lifted up to about that 0.68 range, a lot closer to where, I would want it in an ideal situation. And so yesterday I came back and I did another U2 session, and I just had a great session. And so I had made the changes on my previous one. This one I sat down knowing what changes I made, started out from stroke number 1 with that higher damper setting. And so I had shifted from an 80, which is what I had been used to, up to a 95, 96, and just felt a world of difference. And so I felt way more comfortable. The power was good. I actually was feeling, going way faster than I wanted to at the stroke rates I was used to, because also at that lower damper setting, I had been kind of tapping along my steady state at a 19 or so for my stroke rate. And a little quicker than I would want for UT2. It's within the what I would call an acceptable range, which would be from like 14 to 20, but it was definitely always at the high end. But with that higher drag, I was actually forced myself to bring my stroke rate down, and I was really focusing on just relaxing at a 16 in order to keep my split in the range it needed to be for a UT2 session, which at this point is about 204-ish. And so I made that change. And so I was so used to that 80, and it's been so long since I've been in shape. It's been 7 or so years, and in some respects more, since I've really been training with any kind of meaningful volume or regularity. And so, and that 80 drag factor made sense when I wasn't in shape and I hadn't been training a lot, because I wasn't going very fast. And I just got fixed on that. And as I was getting more and more fit with my recent training, I didn't change the drag factor. And it seems so obvious in retrospect, but having made that change, there was just a big positive benefit. And so my back was feeling a lot better. Certainly 1 or 2 sessions is not enough to make this kind of a fact or rule that this is definitely the reason that everything's feeling better, but it's certainly the start. And I wanted to kind of share that idea with you as I kind of worked through that process. And that led me to the second idea that I wanted to share with you guys, is the value of having professional, ideally, but definitely experienced, objective feedback with your training. All right, so from from a coach, or just from a mentor or another experienced athlete that is in your life, being able to look at your training and offer some feedback and to bounce some ideas off of. For even me, as an experienced and professional coach, so fixated on what I was used to, lacked the objectivity to look in and say, well, maybe I need to make an adjustment on my damper setting in order to bring my back into a better position with that connection dynamic. And it's even more ironic because as recently as this summer, as I was coaching one of my youth athletes who came to me, and he had been using the same damper setting, which most people do, the same drag factor for all of his training, about 115. And so he came in, I think his PR was about 652 on the erg for 2,000 meters. I've been using that 115, and I thought this athlete for sure should be pulling in the 630s. And so one of the first things we did when we brought in and I started training him was I said, okay, well, we need to start varying the damper setting based on what kind of workout we're doing. And so we brought it to where he was hitting about 85, 90 for his drag factor on his UT2 steady state. And about a week or two into that training, he was just starting to really give feedback that his back was giving him problems, that it was really tender through the workouts. And we first tried to address that with some of his technique, because some of his technique was lacking. And so my first thought was, well, we need to improve these technical elements to give the back a better supportive position. Flexibility being key. He is very inflexible in the hamstrings, and so that can put a lot of pressure on the back as well. And so we were really focused on getting a little bit of mobility there. But after a while, it just wasn't going away. And so, it occurred to me, because I know drag factor can be too low as well as too high, we brought his drag factor back up a little bit closer to what he was used to. So we started using a drag factor of 100 instead of the 85, 90 that we had been playing with. And almost within a couple sessions, that back was feeling fine. It was feeling strong again. And from the first session, it was not a limiting factor for his ability to get the volume in. And so, and we progressed, and we had a lot of luck with that summer. And so, within, I think 7 or 8 weeks that we were, or no, it was 10 weeks that we were able to train together, got that 2K down to 643. And that was in spite of taking time off for college visits and getting wisdom teeth out. So even after losing 3-4 weeks of good training, we were still able to drop that 2,000 meter down 9 seconds in just 10 weeks. And so we had a lot of good training, but even coming out of that and having addressed the specific issue of a tender back with raising that damper setting, that drag factor on steady state, on that UT2 steady state, I still lack the objectivity to look at myself and apply that experience, or at least right away. Eventually I figured it out. But I think that's one of the reasons that having kind of an objective perspective on your training and that feedback, or at least somebody to kind of bounce things off of, is really critical for getting the most out of your time that you're investing into that training. And so I really encourage you guys to kind of do that, especially as older athletes that are outside of that high school, college team environment, that are mostly training on our own. Especially if you're not able to join like a local club or local team, either they're one that just isn't near you, or you're just family and work commitments kind of prevent you from putting that additional time commitment, and you really just have enough time to go in the basement and get on the erg and get in a workout in, then still try to find somebody to give you some objectivity to that training and what you're doing going along there. I think it can really make sure that you're getting the most out of your time. So those were my inputs. There is a lot of research out there on the internet for some remote coaching stuff. I'm actually setting up a business right now to do some remote coaching and consulting, and so it happened to kind of tie really well into the ideas that I wanted to bring to this video. There's some other stuff. I think Marlene Royal does some work with masters athletes, and there's a variety of others that are out there as well. And so you just got to do a little bit of research, or even just find somebody locally, find a local coach that's willing to look at maybe some video of you rowing, or look at your training and give a little bit of feedback. But that being said, do your homework and find the kind of best coach that you can to give that feedback, because there are a lot of coaches that just lack that really good, insightful experience with training methodology. All right, so there's a lot of ways that you can be a good coach. Management, leadership, recruitment, and technical insights, and training is one of them. All right, and so the coaches that tend to be great at all of them tend to rise up the ranks really fast. A lot of coaches are just good at a few of those. I certainly know at the youth level there's a lot of coaches that are just really good organizers, leaders, and maybe have some technical insight, but really lack a lot of information about basic training methodology. So be careful there. All right, and that's part of why I'm doing the coaching education I can, because I'd like to try to get that information out there, because it's something that can be easily rectified if we're connecting these people with the right information. So that being said, find the right kind of insight, get it, use it. Don't be afraid to play with that damper setting if you're having some issues with your back just being tight, being tender. Find what's ideal. The main rule is you shouldn't be using the same drag factor for all different stroke rates and all different power per strokes, power applications. And so if you are using the same thing, no matter what, you definitely can benefit from adjusting it, and the process of adjusting kind of up to you. And so I'm finding that UT2 damper setting right now for me is about 80 drag factor below what I would be using in a race pace situation. Probably about 15 lower for UT1, and somewhere between, I would say 6 to 3 or 4 lower for any of my anaerobic work. So that's that. Hopefully made it through. A little bit of rambling, wasn't able to cut, but I really hope that this helped you guys, gave you some insights, or at least got your kind of brain thinking about some different approaches and making some changes and seeing how those changes affect your training. So as always, like the video if you found it valuable, subscribe if you want more of the content, but more importantly, share this with people that you think could benefit as well. I'd love to get the word out, doing this to kind of help you guys. So if you guys can help me get the word out and share it, that would be awesome. I really appreciate it. So that is it. Signing off. Thanks guys, and happy training. Bye.